She says, hi. I thought, oh, wow. I said, wow, hi. She says, hi, Michael.
Swears that sometimes when you hit the ball, you went, hooah! Is that true or is that not true?
Well, it's unconscious, I guess. I don't know.
From movie legend to completely broke in one day, Al Pacino lost everything when his trusted money man stole $50 million in a massive scam. Now, at 84, he's paying $400,000 a year for landscaping on empty houses, supporting a 29-year-old girlfriend who's dating other men, and taking humiliating roles just to survive. The Godfather star even died for several minutes during COVID, with doctors fighting to bring him back. This is the shocking true story of a Hollywood icon's fall. Al Pacino was born Alfredo James Pacino on April 25, 1940, in East Harlem, New York City. His parents, Rose and Salvatore Pacino, were both of Sicilian descent. His father had immigrated from San Fratello, Sicily, while his mother's family came from Corleone. That name would later become famous in The Godfather, but for Pacino, it was simply part of his roots. When he was just 2, his parents separated. His father moved to California to work as a salesman, leaving Pacino and his mother to start over in the South Bronx. Life was hard. His mother moved them into her parents' home, where he was raised by his grandparents, Kate and James Girardi. His grandmother was the one in charge, a strong woman who kept the family together. Growing up in the Bronx meant facing struggles every day. Pacino got into fights, skipped school, and even stole food when money was tight. He had dreams of becoming a baseball player at first, but over time, movies became his escape. His mother took him to the theater often, and by his teenage years, acting was all he wanted to do. School was never his strong suit. He attended Herman Ritter Junior High and later the High School of Performing Arts, but academics felt like a barrier rather than a path forward. English was the only subject he passed. At 17, he dropped out. His mother was devastated. She wanted him to have a steady career, something that could give him stability. When he refused, their arguments grew worse. Eventually, he left home and had to support himself. The next few years were some of the hardest in his life. He worked whatever jobs he could find: messenger, janitor, busboy, postal clerk. Some nights, he had nowhere to go and slept on the streets or on friends' couches. He also fell in with the wrong crowd. By age 9, he had started smoking and drinking. By 13, he was using marijuana. Many of his closest friends spiraled into drug addiction, and 3 of them died from heroin abuse. Pacino saw what could happen if he lost focus. He was determined not to end up the same way. He auditioned for the Actors Studio, but was rejected multiple times. Instead of giving up, he enrolled at HB Studio, where he met Charlie Lawton. Lawton became his mentor and introduced him to method acting, a style that required deep emotional commitment. Pacino trained day and night, pouring everything into his craft. But money was still a problem. Some nights, he slept in theaters where he rehearsed, using the stage as his bed. Then, in 1962, tragedy struck. His mother died from an overdose at just 43 years old. Less than a year later, his grandfather passed away as well. The losses were devastating. Pacino fell into depression and struggled to stay afloat. He was homeless at times, often borrowing money just to eat, but he refused to let go of his dream. At 23, he was finally accepted into the Actors Studio. He trained under Lee Strasberg, one of the most influential acting teachers in history. Strasberg taught him how to trust himself, how to bring raw emotion into every role. Pacino had found his place, but success was still a long way off. In 1968, his luck changed. He landed a role in The Indian Wants the Bronx, an off-Broadway play that caught the attention of critics and filmmakers. The performance earned him an Obie Award and opened doors that had once seemed impossible. After years of struggle, he was finally being noticed. Looking back, Pacino once said, "I knew I was this vagabond kid, but when the opportunity came, all I had to do was be there." Every hardship, every rejection, every night spent on the streets had led him to this moment. Al Pacino's journey into Hollywood started with a small but important role in Me, Natalie, 1969. The film, directed by Fred Coe, starred Patty Duke as a young woman trying to navigate life in Greenwich Village. Pacino had a brief appearance, but it marked his official film debut. At the time, he was still an unknown actor, living in Greenwich Village and studying at the Herbert Berghof studio under Charlie Lawton. His real passion was theater, and earlier that year, he had won a Tony Award for Does the Tiger Wear a Necktie? His performance in that play showed his deep commitment to acting, but Hollywood was a different world. Me, Natalie was not a blockbuster, but it made $1.9 million in box office rentals in the US and Canada. More importantly, it gave Pacino his first experience in front of a film camera. It was a small step, but it mattered. 2 years later, in 1971, he landed his first leading role in The Panic in Needle Park. This was a much bigger challenge. Directed by Jerry Schatzberg, the film was a dark and unflinching look at heroin addiction in New York City. Pacino played Bobby, a small-time hustler whose life spirals out of control, along with his girlfriend, Helen, played by Kitty Wynn. The script was written by Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunn, based on a novel by James Mills. It didn't sugarcoat anything. It showed the harsh realities of drug addiction with brutal honesty. Pacino brought raw intensity to Bobby, making him both charismatic and deeply troubled. Critics praised his performance, calling it one of the most authentic portrayals of addiction ever seen on screen. The film wasn't a commercial success, but it became a cult classic. Kitty Wynn won Best Actress at Cannes, but Pacino's performance was the one that truly stood out. It caught the attention of a director who would change his life forever, Francis Ford Coppola. Coppola was in the middle of casting The Godfather, 1972. Paramount wanted a well-known actor for the role of Michael Corleone. They considered Jack Nicholson and Robert Redford, but Coppola saw something in Pacino that no one else did. The studio pushed for James Caan, arguing that Pacino was too short and not famous enough. Coppola refused to back down. He believed Pacino had the quiet intensity needed for Michael's transformation from a reluctant outsider to a ruthless mafia boss. Pacino almost lost the role. In the first week of filming, executives were unimpressed. They thought his performance was too passive. Coppola had to fight to keep him. Then came the restaurant assassination scene, where Michael kills Sollozzo and McCluskey. It was the turning point. Pacino's controlled performance in that moment changed everything. The studio finally saw what Coppola had seen from the start. When The Godfather premiered on March 15, 1972, it became an instant classic. It made over $250 million worldwide on a $6 million budget. Pacino's performance was unforgettable. He was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, alongside James Caan and Robert Duvall. He didn't win, but the nomination alone proved he was no longer just a theater actor. He was a Hollywood star. 2 years later, he returned for The Godfather Part 2, 1974. This time, the film told two stories: Michael Corleone's rise to power in the present and his father Vito Corleone's early life, played by Robert De Niro. Michael was no longer an outsider. He was now the head of the family, and Pacino's performance showed how power had transformed him. He was colder, more ruthless, more isolated. Critics called it one of the greatest acting performances of all time. The film won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Pacino was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Art Carney. Still, he won the BAFTA for Best Actor, proving that his talent was recognized worldwide. Between the two Godfather films, Pacino also starred in Serpico, 1973. Directed by Sidney Lumet, it was based on the true story of NYPD officer Frank Serpico, who exposed corruption within the force. The role allowed Pacino to show a different side of his acting. He wasn't playing a gangster or a criminal. He was playing a man fighting against a corrupt system. His performance was explosive. The frustration and anger he showed on screen felt real because he had completely immersed himself in the role. He earned another Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Then came Dog Day Afternoon, 1975, another Sidney Lumet film. This time, Pacino played Sonny Wartzik, a desperate man who robs a bank to pay for his partner's gender-affirming surgery. The story was based on real events, and Pacino brought energy and emotion to the role. One of the most famous moments in the film happened when he stepped outside the bank and started shouting, "Attica!" at the police, referencing the 1971 Attica prison riots. That scene was completely improvised. The film was another critical and commercial success, earning Pacino yet another Oscar nomination. Al Pacino was at the top of Hollywood in the early 1970s. The Godfather, Serpico, and Dog Day Afternoon made him one of the most respected actors in the industry. But by the late 1970s, things started to fall apart. His first major stumble came with Bobby Deerfield in 1977. It was a romantic drama directed by Sidney Pollack, meant to showcase a different side of Pacino. Instead, it turned into one of his biggest failures. Audiences found it slow and unengaging. Some even booed at screenings. Critics were just as harsh. One review dismissed it as dreck that should have gone straight to video, which was especially brutal considering home video didn't even exist yet. His struggles continued with Cruising in 1980. Directed by William Friedkin, the film followed an undercover detective searching for a serial killer in New York's underground gay leather scene. From the start, it faced massive backlash. Activists protested during filming, blasting air horns, using mirrors to ruin shots, and making so much noise that much of the dialogue had to be re-recorded. When the movie hit theaters, the controversy only grew. Many saw it as exploitative. The story's open-ended conclusion frustrated audiences. Critics dismissed it as confusing and unfocused. Years later, in his 2024 memoir Sonny Boy, Pacino admitted he regretted doing the film and refused to promote it. His career was in trouble, but in 1983, he made one of the biggest comebacks in film history. Scarface was violent, excessive, and unlike anything he had ever done before. The role of Tony Montana was a huge risk. Sidney Lumet was originally set to direct, but left over creative differences. Oliver Stone wrote the screenplay while struggling with cocaine addiction, which added to the film's raw intensity. When it was released, critics weren't impressed. Many saw it as over-the-top and too violent. But the audience response was different. People connected with Tony Montana's rise and fall. The film made $66 million worldwide against a $25 million budget. Over time, it became a cultural phenomenon. The line, "Say hello to my little friend," became legendary. Hip-hop artists embraced the film, and its influence spread far beyond Hollywood. Pacino had proven once again why he was one of the best. Just as it seemed like his career was back on track, another disaster hit. Revolution in 1985 was a historical epic about the American Revolution. It cost $28 million to make, but earned only $358,574. Critics hated it. Pacino's accent was widely mocked. The film was so poorly received that he stepped away from Hollywood for 4 years. He made his return with Sea of Love in 1989, a solid hit that reminded audiences of his talent. But it wasn't until 1992 that he had his true comeback. Scent of a Woman changed everything. Directed by Martin Brest, it told the story of Frank Slade, a blind and bitter former Army officer who bonds with a young student. The role was complex. Slade was angry, unpredictable, but also charming in his own way. The performance built up to a powerful courtroom speech that left audiences stunned. Pacino had been nominated for an Oscar 8 times before without winning. This time, he finally took home the Academy Award for Best Actor. The film made $134.1 million worldwide against a $31 million budget and won multiple Golden Globes. Decades of success made him one of the most respected actors in the world. But behind the fame, he was heading toward a financial disaster that would cost him everything. In his 70s, he lost $50 million in a Ponzi scheme, spent millions on things he didn't even use, and had to take roles he never imagined just to stay afloat. The biggest betrayal came from a man Pacino trusted with his fortune. Kenneth Starr was a financial advisor who handled money for some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Pacino believed his wealth was in good hands. He gave Starr full control over his finances. He even allowed him to sign checks on his behalf. For years, Starr kept up the illusion that everything was fine. In reality, he was running a Ponzi scheme, shifting money between accounts and using celebrity funds for his own benefit. By the time the truth came out in 2010, Pacino's money was gone. Starr was convicted that same year. He was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, but that didn't bring Pacino's fortune back. The actor later wrote about the moment he realized what had happened. One day, he had $50 million. The next, he had nothing. It wasn't just the Ponzi scheme that drained his wealth. Pacino had been spending at a level that even his millions couldn't sustain. He was paying $400,000 a year for landscaping on a house he didn't even live in. Adjusted for inflation, that would be close to $900,000 today. He also discovered he was paying for 16 cars, even though he only owned 2. He had 23 active cell phone lines. He had no idea how these charges kept piling up. He had always ignored his finances. He focused on acting and let others handle the money. He thought he was making enough to cover any expense. In reality, even his massive paychecks, $10 million per film, were being eaten away by taxes, legal fees, and agent commissions. On top of that, he rented properties instead of buying them. He moved between luxurious homes and spent millions on extravagant trips. One trip to Europe alone cost him millions. He flew guests on a private Gulfstream jet and rented an entire floor at London's Dorchester Hotel. Everything seemed fine, until suddenly it wasn't. His fortune was gone, and he needed to act fast. That's when fans saw him in a role that left them stunned. In 2011, he appeared in Jack and Jill, a comedy starring Adam Sandler. The film was a commercial hit, making $149 million worldwide, but critics tore it apart. It holds a 3% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Pacino's performance, where he played an over-the-top version of himself, earned him 2 Razzie Awards for Worst Supporting Actor and Worst Screen Couple. Fans wondered why he took the role. The answer was simple. He was broke. He needed money, and Jack and Jill was a quick way to get it. The film reportedly paid him $5 million. It was a lifeline. It didn't restore his fortune, but it helped him stay afloat. Despite the criticism, the film led to more opportunities. Brands approached him for commercials. Studios offered him new roles. Slowly, he started rebuilding his finances. Looking back, he admitted Jack and Jill wasn't his proudest moment, but he had no regrets. He even said Adam Sandler was great to work with. Al Pacino has never been married, but he is the father of 4 children from 3 different relationships. His eldest, Julie Marie, was born on October 16, 1989. Her mother, acting coach Jan Tarrant, had a brief relationship with Pacino before they parted ways. More than a decade later, in 2001, Pacino became a father again when his twins, Anton James and Olivia Rose, were born. Their mother, actress Beverly D'Angelo, was with Pacino for 6 years from 1997 to 2003. Then, in 2023, something unexpected happened. At the age of 83, Pacino welcomed his 4th child. His girlfriend, film producer Noor Al-Fala, gave birth to their son, Roman, on June 15, 2023. Alfala is 54 years younger than Pacino. Their relationship began in April 2022 and quickly became a topic of discussion. Over the years, Pacino had been linked to several famous women, including his Godfather co-star Diane Keaton. Their relationship lasted on and off for years before ending after The Godfather Part 3. Keaton once said she was deeply in love with Pacino and called him the most entertaining man. Later, Pacino spent a decade with Argentine actress Lucila Polak. Before that, he had relationships with Tuesday Weld and Marta Keller, among others. Despite these romances, Pacino never saw marriage as something that fit his life. He once said it simply didn't feel right for him. But fatherhood was different. He always took pride in being a father, though balancing it with his career wasn't easy. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, he admitted he hadn't always given his twins the attention they deserved while they were growing up. Al Pacino has lived through moments that feel like scenes from one of his movies. Some were terrifying. Some changed him forever. All of them show a side of his life that most people never see. Back in the 1970s, when The Godfather had turned him into a household name, something happened that could have ended very differently. One night, after hours of drinking with Richard Hackman, the brother of Gene Hackman, Pacino found himself too drunk to get home on his own. A woman, a fan, offered him a ride. In his state, he didn't think twice. He got in. At first, nothing seemed strange. Then he realized they weren't heading in the right direction. He asked where they were going. Her response sent a chill through him. "I'm kidnapping you." Even with alcohol clouding his mind, instinct took over. He told her he was getting out, but she kept driving. The only way to escape was to jump. He was ready. Maybe she saw the panic in his eyes. Maybe she realized he wasn't going to give in easily. Whatever the reason, she suddenly gave up. Instead of taking him somewhere unknown, she turned around and drove him home. Years later, in his memoir Sonny Boy, Pacino wrote that growing up in the South Bronx had prepared him for situations like this. He had learned early on how to survive. That night, those instincts saved him. Nearly 50 years later, in 2020, he faced something even more dangerous. COVID-19 swept across the world, and Pacino was one of the many who got sick. The virus hit him hard. Fever, dehydration, and then nothing. He lost consciousness. His pulse disappeared. For a few terrifying minutes, he was gone. Paramedics arrived in full protective suits. 6 of them, along with 2 doctors, worked to bring him back. When he finally woke up, he was surrounded by figures in head-to-toe medical gear. He later said they looked like they had stepped out of a science fiction movie, but nothing felt more surreal than what he had just experienced. People who survive close calls like this often talk about seeing a bright light or feeling a presence. Pacino felt none of that. He described it as a void. "You're here. You're not. You don't even have your memories. You have nothing." The experience changed him. It made him rethink everything: life, death, and what might come after. After recovering, he made a promise to take better care of himself and spend more time with his son, Roman. But no matter how much time passes, he knows that moment will stay with him forever. Long before either of these near-death experiences, Pacino was already battling something that wouldn't let him rest. Chronic insomnia had followed him for most of his life. For decades, he struggled to sleep. His mind wouldn't slow down. Some nights, he lay awake for hours, lost in thoughts that refused to leave him alone. Other nights, exhaustion won. But no matter how tired he was, sleep never came easy. By the time he became a major star, the lack of sleep had started affecting his daily life. He often stayed awake until sunrise, leaving him drained during the day. Over time, the effects piled up. Mood swings, memory lapses, moments where exhaustion blurred reality. He even admitted to experiencing hallucinations at his lowest points. In 2002, he played a detective suffering from severe sleep deprivation in Insomnia, a psychological thriller directed by Christopher Nolan. For him, the role wasn't just acting. He knew exactly what it felt like to lie awake for nights on end, feeling his mind slip away. Money problems only made things worse. At one point, a corrupt accountant cost him millions. The financial stress added a new layer to his sleepless nights. Even when he found ways to cope, the battle never really ended. Insomnia was something he had learned to live with, but it remained one of the hardest struggles of his life, an invisible fight that no one could see. Al Pacino has spent decades as one of Hollywood's most respected actors. But with fame comes scrutiny, and some of his career choices and personal relationships have sparked controversy. One of the most talked-about moments of his career came in 1980 when he starred in Cruising, a thriller that quickly became a lightning rod for protests. Directed by William Friedkin, the film followed Pacino as an undercover detective infiltrating the gay club scene in New York City to catch a serial killer. On paper, it had the makings of a gripping crime drama. In reality, it set off a firestorm. LGBTQ+ activists feared it would spread harmful stereotypes, and they didn't wait for its release to make their voices heard. Protests erupted during production, with demonstrators showing up at filming locations almost daily. They chanted, waved signs, and disrupted takes with loud noises to make it clear they weren't going to let this movie paint their community in a negative light. When Cruising hit theaters, the backlash was just as intense. Critics called it exploitative. Audiences were divided, and many saw it as sensationalizing the LGBTQ+ community rather than representing them. Even Pacino later admitted he regretted doing the film. In his memoir, Sonny Boy, he revealed that he donated his entire paycheck from the movie to charity, anonymously, after seeing how it turned out. He had wanted to challenge himself as an actor, but instead, he found himself at the center of a controversy that never quite faded. Years later, Pacino's personal life became the focus of another heated discussion. His relationship with Noor Alfallah, a woman 54 years younger than him, raised eyebrows from the start. They had a son together, Roman Alfallah Pacino, in June 2023. But by October 2024, their romantic relationship was over. That didn't mean she was out of his life. In fact, she remained deeply connected to him, and not just because of their child. Alfallah had a history of dating older, wealthy men, including Mick Jagger and Clint Eastwood, which led to speculation about her motives. Friends of Pacino worried she might be using him for financial gain. Their concerns weren't entirely unfounded. Court records showed that Pacino was ordered to pay $30,000 a month in child support, along with an upfront payment of $110,000 and additional expenses like $13,000 for a night nurse. On top of that, he had to contribute $15,000 annually to an education fund for their son. Even after the breakup, Alfallah continued living a lavish lifestyle, seemingly funded by Pacino. Meanwhile, she was spotted dating other high-profile men, including comedian Bill Maher. This reportedly left Pacino feeling betrayed, but it didn't change his financial support for her. Friends described him as hopelessly enamored and speculated that he might even leave her a significant portion of his fortune. To some, this looked like a case of love clouding judgment. Others saw it as a cautionary tale about power imbalances in relationships. Regardless of where the truth lies, Pacino's devotion to Alfallah, despite the warnings and speculation, kept people talking. Whether he was being taken advantage of or simply choosing to support the mother of his child, one thing was clear. Even at this stage of his life, Al Pacino was still making headlines.